So maybe if we could just spend a quick moment going around the room and just say who you are so that we're all well aware of it. I'm James. I'm the director of the MPICT Center.
I'm Dennis Soto. I work for Cisco in the Networking Academy, curriculum development and assessment development.
And Tim Ryan, I'm a co-PI on the MPICT grant and also the network manager in the IT department at City College.
I'm Jen Jang, one of the other co-PIs on the MPICT grant, and I'm also an instructor in Asian American Studies at City College.
So if it seems like I'm stalking you, it's because we have some people online. I want them to be able to hear.
Chris Wu, Associate Director at MPICT, working with James and Pierre.
My name is Tim Posar. I'm an independent consultant. I'm also consulting with the City of San Francisco on their community fiber development.
Lori Kingshot. I'm with AT&T and Regional Sales Director, Government and Higher Ed Accounts.
I'm Craig Persico, a co-PI with MPICT and teach computer science at City College, San Francisco.
Hi, I'm Sandy Jones. I'm a computer science instructor at Los Medanos College.
I'm Charlie Verbim. I work at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab in the IT division.
I'm Richard Rodiget, CS faculty member at Ohlone College, one of the partner schools.
Hi, I'm Damon Graywater, IT Director for California.
I'm Bren Body Thomas. I am the manager of the Super Help Desk at Exchange Bank in Santa Rosa, and I'm also the Western Region Director for HDI. It's a National IT Service and Support Association.
Michael McKeever, Santa Rosa Junior College instructor, CS Department, MPICT member.
Great. And who's online?
Pete Safland, evaluator.
Pete Safland, our evaluator.
This is Dave Nelson, and I manage the VMware IT Academy.
Okay, and Phil Jordan is here as well from Green LMI. He helped us with the Phase 2 workforce study. So here's what we've got planned for today. The lunch part we're just sort of wrapped up, and now we're going to do a little reporting from MPICT about things that we've been up to lately. We've taken so much of your time on these studies in the past. We should tell you, that's not all we do. So we'll tell you a little bit about some of the other things we're doing. You're probably curious about the Phase 2 report that you provided such valuable input into. That's done. We'll share a few highlights from that. And then we want to try to work out on the topic of what we can do with this Phase 3 report and possibly use ICT user proficiency or digital literacy as a way to work out in that area. So just as a matter of introduction, a lot of you have heard this before, but today we all depend on information and communications technologies. It's how students get their assignments and get their work done. It's how workers get their work done. It's how organizations achieve productivity and efficiency, and it's increasingly a key source of information and activity in society. But it's a really nutty field. It's all over the place. It's pervasive. It's into everything. It's really, really complex. There's all sorts of different messages. People use words differently. It evolves quickly. It's diverging. It's converging. It's really just a nutty, nutty, chaotic field. And so we're trying to help make some sense out of that. There's something that I call the Tower of Babel effect, and that is that everybody has some idea about what this ICT world is, but they've probably had to make that up on their own. They've had to make sense out of what ICT is and how it fits in the world on their own. And you have conversations with people, and they're using the same words, but they really mean very different things. I don't know if you've encountered that, but I encounter it all the time. And so that's one of the things we grapple with is this Tower of Babel effect. And can we come up with some sort of common nomenclature and framework and structures that allow us? So ICT is basically anything that's related to computers and communications technologies. It's a catch-all phrase. It doesn't mean that networking as a term goes away and now it's called ICT. At some point you have to think about all these things together because they're interrelated and interdependent. Does it have a chip in it? Does it use electrons to communicate between people and devices? Then it's ICT, basically. And it's used pretty much everywhere else in the world except the U.S. and including the European Union, the World Bank, the United Nations. We're encouraging its use here. We think it makes sense in today's flat world to all line up on the same structure. Okay, so some updates from MPICT, some things that have been going on for us. Back in June, we had our Faculty Development Week where we brought in faculty from our region. 79 people showed up and we taught them some new stuff to teach in the classrooms and some new things to teach. In the hardware and IT area, there was a storage class, VMware, thanks Dave, a forensics class, in the computer science and programming arena, Android, game programming to make it fun. We help people learn how to teach simultaneously in person and online to expand the reach of courses. That's something that we're focused on. And we gathered the IT managers from a whole bunch of community colleges to work out on how can the IT organizations at colleges better support the special needs of the IT academic programs, which need a whole lot more than just the English class or the history class. I don't know if anybody's taken a look at our website lately, but there's a lot of great content up there. All the ICT-related programs in our region, there's information up there on that. There's a whole bunch of great educator resources. We've got some sort of Web 2.0 tools up there now. We've got our own YouTube channel, so we can start sending messages out by video. We've got a new blog space that we're trying to get some momentum behind and as a community building resource. So we hope to steer people towards that as a place to build momentum around efforts to improve ICT education in the region. So this summer, for the second time, there was a national conference in Orlando this time that is about sharing the good work of NSF-funded centers and projects at community colleges. And MPICT was a contributor, organizer, committee member, and all that in getting that event going. That's just an FYI for now. We got a new regional partner from Hawaii, Kapi'olani Community College. It's the biggest community college in Hawaii. It's in Honolulu, and we're very, very pleased with that. Hawaii's different from California in that it has one consolidated higher educational system. So there's some great interaction between the community college and the university, beyond what we're able to accomplish here. For example, these guys have created a 3+1 articulation model with the local university where students spend 3 years in the community college and they just go for 1 year to the university to get a Bachelor of Applied Science, which is way more affordable than the go to university for 4-year model. Newsletters, I hope you guys see them. We send them out. That's a way to try to keep everybody up to date about some of the things that are going on here at the center. We're very excited about our winter conference this year, which will be January 6th and 7th. It's going to be between this campus right here where you are and a Microsoft facility that's right around the corner in the Westfield Center. As of Monday, we had 105 people signed up for the event, and we haven't even announced who's speaking. Last year there were like 172. It's a really great event. There's a good turnout from industry. I know Dennis is going to be there representing Cisco. We've got representation from IBM, Microsoft, Oracle, VMware. There's really a fabulous turnout from industry to sort of help educators understand their resources and how they can make use of them. But there's also a fabulous turnout from the educator community, people who are sharing their best practices and resources. Everybody is overtaxed. We're all too busy to do everything well, but everybody does something well. So come share what you do well, and then we're all better off. That's kind of the spirit of that event. It's very tough to travel for educators right now. We help that through stipends and expense reimbursements. It's a joint event with the National ICT Center in Massachusetts, and we're also throwing in this year with 2 other NSF-funded centers, Baytech, which is from the Boston area, and Cassia from the Chicago area, Center for Cyber Security and Information Assurance or something like that. They're security focused. So we're growing that event, and we're very pleased with it. If anybody wants to pitch in some raffle gifts, feel free. Pierre, you got a nice French accent. You want to talk about this one for a second?
Yeah. So we applied for we received a grant from the National Science Foundation, supplemental grant for a collaboration project with France. And so we have a center for the CFI, Centre de Formation Industrielle, which is a school sponsored by the Chamber of Commerce of Paris. And they have vocational courses, 2-year courses that are available for their students. And in particular, the one that we are going to contact with, to work with, it's a program for, they call it architect informatique. And these are actually network students. And they have they follow the Cisco Networking Academy program. And we are now ramping up a project which is going to be in 2 parts. There is going to be a class that we are creating, which is a capstone course, which will be taught by Michael McKeever with here, one of our partners, and another teacher from Ohlone College. Some students from our colleges, from all our partner colleges, are going to be recruited by us to attend that class, which is going to be shared with the students in France. The student in France, I want to say, I forgot to mention that the program in France is a 2-year program, but the students spend 2 weeks in the classroom and 2 weeks as an intern in a IT company. So that's the model. And so we are going to be, we're going to bring 12 of our students who are going to take this class for 2 weeks in Paris, where they're going to give a presentation on their scenario-based project that will be part of this capstone course. And obviously there is going to be some job shadowing that our students are going to do, some visit of industry, and obviously reception by the Chamber of Commerce. San Francisco and Paris have a partnership, digital partnership, and that's going to be played up in this program. So we are very proud to have received this grant from NSF and to be able to sponsor this project. And it's going to, we'll be able to report to you when it's going to happen. This is going to happen in May next year, between March and May for the class, and the visit will be May and June next year. So that's all I can say from now. It's in the works. We are recruiting the students right now.
Very cool, exciting opportunity for students to get real-world-like experience. So the scenario is basically you're part of a merged international corporation. You got to make your networks work across 5 locations in the U.S. and Paris. So you get to go to Paris and work it out in the end. Pretty cool. So remember High Tech in Orlando? That didn't make a whole lot of sense for us to go to Orlando. Well, this year it's going to be in San Francisco in July, and we're going to take over the Hyatt Hotel, which is at the end of Market Street down by the Ferry Building. There'll probably be about 800 people there. Again, it's not all ICT. Some of it is focused in other fields, manufacturing, agriculture, whatever. But we want to create a rock-solid ICT track in that, including some field trips to Silicon Valley locations. If anybody's got ideas for that, I know we'd like to go down to Cisco, to the Applied Technology Demo Facility, whatever that's called. Yeah.
I'm sure we can set something up too.
Great.
Next.
Okay, and so we've been joined on the phone also by Nick Zenos, who is running the Academic Alliance at Juniper Networks. The Phase 2 study, most of you were involved in the planning for that. It was an effort to go out and figure out, well, let's use ICT in California, and let's figure out how big and important ICT industries are, how big and important ICT employment is in California. It's part of a 3-phase effort. The first phase was just sort of introducing ICT to the state of California. The second, again, was how big and important is it in California. And then the third phase, which we're approaching now, is a whole lot more granular. So what specifically do we need in our ICT workforce? What are community colleges offering? Are there any gaps? You know, can we help teachers understand what they should be teaching to prepare the workforce for real jobs? So just to report real quick, or reasonably quick, some of what we learned in Phase 2, because I think we learned some really interesting stuff. It had 3 components. The first was secondary research on ICT industries. The second was secondary research on ICT employment. And the third was primary research with employers about their ICT workforce. So the methodology, again, that's something we worked out here in the advisory panel meeting a year ago or so. Involved mapping NAICS codes to ICT and then going out and querying existing data sources. The mapping, some of those NAICS codes you can say, oh, that's definitely 100% ICT. Some of them you can't. And so we just looked at some and said, well, we'll say a quarter of those are ICT related, and that's how we came up with our numbers. So what did we learn? ICT industries are about 46,000 companies in California. That's 1 in 28 companies, 4% of all companies. They produce $172 billion in revenue. That's about 6% of private sector revenues, 6 among California industries. But they employ about 1 million workers in California, 4% of the total state workforce, which ranks 12th among industries by employee counts. And they pay $76 billion in wages. That's second among private sector wages. So these are good paying jobs. They're about twice the state average. And there's projections for very strong job growth, 20% for ICT industries between 2006 and 2016. So there's some interesting things here. Here's just an example of one of the graphs that are included in the report. But see this category right here, information? If before this study, if you went out and wanted to know, well, how big and important are computer industries in the state of California, this is the closest you could get to it. But see the different shading, the dark and the light green? The light green is the ICT-related stuff. And the darker green is actually things like newspapers, publishing industries that are lumped into the information category. So newspapers are getting whacked right now, I think. But the net effect, if you look at information, is information's not doing real well in the state. So this is an interesting finding. If you look at it, and you take the ICT part out of professional, scientific, and technical services, ICT is actually second in the state in terms of employee wages. So what we learned, I guess the bottom line is ICT industries are really big and important in California. Everybody sort of knows that intuitively, but it's a lot bigger and more important than people previously thought. Again, it's growing strong. And it is about where you would expect it to be, Bay Area up towards Sacramento and Southern California. That's where most of the companies and most of the jobs are. But there are companies and jobs, scattered throughout the state. Okay, but not every job in an ICT company is an ICT-related job. They have accountants, they have people, cleaning the grounds, they have all sorts of other jobs. So we also have to look at, ICT employment wherever it exists. And so that was the focus of the second part of this study. Same methodology, but instead of using NAICS codes, we used SOC codes. And we found in the U.S., it's about 5% of all private sector jobs. So 1 in 20 jobs in the United States is an ICT workforce job. Strong employment growth. In California, 1 in 20 jobs also. Strong growth projected. And these jobs pay about twice the median for the state of California. So there's a lot of jobs, they're growing fast, and they're paid really, really well. Similar kind of thing here. Computer and mathematical science occupations is the closest existing category to ICT. But if you look at what ICT is, it's actually a whole lot more than that. And so this is a raising awareness beyond what people think they know about the field. That's part of this study. Super strong job growth. And this is just from the traditional data sources. So the third component was primary research. So we said, we don't want to just rely on the data that's out there in some database. We want to actually talk to real companies. And so we went out and did that with 600 California companies. And they represented the California economy. There was a diversity in company size and location and, technological focus. And here's some of the things that we learned. 80% of firms either agree or strongly agree that ICT is important to the productivity of their organization. This is strategically important stuff. And it's true across all sorts of different sizes. You've got your ICT-related firms, you've got your non-ICT-related firms, you've got your geographic diversity, you've got your company size. And it's true, it's more important with a larger company than a smaller company. But still, 2/3 of businesses with 5 or fewer employees think this is important. So then we wanted to ask some questions about the workforce. And we wanted to sort of define the workforce. And you can't count users, because everybody's a user today. And if you ask people about your users, it's not really very meaningful. So we tried to use some plain language about it. So it's your R&D people and it's your applied technology people. And we defined that in some very simple ways so that we could, get some sort of answer back from people. Basically 5 categories. Here's one of them. So, and by the way, this is not about job title, it's about job function, because job title doesn't work anymore. You have no idea what somebody's job is going to be called. You may have an office manager and 80% of what they do is ICT stuff. So you have to ask about what they do. And that's why we did it in terms of roles. So roles supporting end users. Well, more than 2/3 of firms think that that's important. A little more important for ICT firms. It's important in every geography. It's more important as the organization grows in size. But it's important to every company, no matter where it is. So roles supporting enterprise-wide and data center systems. So this is the infrastructure that you put out in an organization that your users make use of. 2/3 of all firms think that these roles are extremely important. More important for an ICT company, but it's important for everybody. Again, that importance grows as the organization grows in size. Roles supporting internet, intranet, and other online and web-based systems. 71% of companies say these roles are important or extremely important. Same sort of trend, more important for ICT companies than non-ICT companies, more important in big companies than little companies, but important for everybody, no matter what industry you're in, no matter what you do. ICT management roles are way more important for an ICT company than for a non-ICT company. Way more important for a big organization than a small organization. That sort of makes intuitive sense. Hardware and software development roles, same kind of thing. Way more important for an ICT-related company, much less important for a small company or a non-ICT company. That's also intuitive. You know, if you're in the business, you need people who develop products and services. And then marketing and sales, same basic trend. If you got an ICT-related product or service, it's important for you. If not, it's much less important.
What?
So most companies agree that these roles are increasing in importance to their organizations. And then asked if they're going to need more or fewer employees in the next 2 years. 36%, and only 2% expect fewer. So people expect these roles to grow in importance, and they're going to be hiring people for them, even in the next 2 years in this miserable climate. So these were kind of important findings here. California companies expect 3.8% overall employment growth over the next 2 years, and those numbers track with estimates from other sources. But ICT companies expect much more employment growth than non-ICT companies. So the prospects for organizations in ICT industries are better than non-ICT for employment. So of the ICT companies, they expect 11.2% growth over the next 2 years for their ICT workforce, compared with overall employment growth of 8.5%. So those companies are going to be growing, adding workforce. They're going to be adding more people in ICT roles than in non-ICT roles. Really interestingly, for the non-ICT companies who expect a slightly negative overall employment growth, they still expect 3.7% growth for their ICT workforce. Even if they're not hiring people in general, they're hiring people in ICT roles. So are you going to develop internally, or are you going to hire people from outside for these roles? Well, most people are going to hire from outside rather than develop their own employees internally. So we asked, what are you looking for in the workforce? The technical skills? And the answer is yes. That's the dark green. Across the board, everybody thinks those technical skills are important. But look how closely they're followed by interpersonal communication skills, problem-solving skills, abilities to work with other groups and departments, technical writing. It's not enough to have technical knowledge. You have to have it successful in the ICT workforce. This one was really surprising. Over half of firms report difficulty recruiting employees with appropriate skills and training. In this economic climate, that's unbelievable. There are people dying because they don't have jobs, and companies are saying we're having a hard time finding people. That's telling us there's demand for ICT training. This one was really interesting. You know, there's this idea that you have to have a bachelor's degree to get a job in the ICT workforce. Almost half of California firms do not require a bachelor's degree for at least half their ICT workforce. So there are certainly jobs out there for people with bachelor's degrees, but there are jobs for people without them. When we ask employers about how good a job are California community colleges doing developing the ICT workforce, more than half didn't know or had no opinion. So we're not doing a good job communicating with employers about the community college value proposition. We need to do a better job. So we ask employers, you know, would you value standards that allow you to know that people coming out of different academic programs sort of have the same knowledge and skills? And they're more than 3.5 times more likely to agree or strongly agree than disagree or strongly disagree that they would value those standards. We asked a similar question, and so this is really at the, you know, the R&D level or the applied technology level. But we asked the same question at the user level, that is digital literacy. You know, would you value some sort of credential for your user level competency? And the answer is yes. They're 4.4 times more likely to desire a credential like that in an ICT company, 2.4 times more likely in a non-ICT company. We had some open-ended questions about skills. You know, what is it that community colleges need to do a better job with? Because you know, you're doing a pretty good job with the technical skills. Well, things like, you know, communications and real-world experience and professional skills and problem-solving skills and ethics and motivation and grit and independence. I hear these kinds of things a lot when I talk to employers. So it's not, and this mirrors one of the questions earlier, it's not enough just to have technical knowledge. You have to have other qualities as well to be successful. So, you know, sort of the bottom line from this study is, you know, and a lot of us know this intuitively, but ICT is big and important in California. It's the industries are big and important. 4% of companies, 6% of revenues, 4% of workers, 12% of wages. This is a big sector. It's important to the California economy. Occupations, same thing. 1 in 20 jobs, strong job growth, wages twice the average. You know, these occupations are important in California. And everybody agrees that ICT itself is strategically important to their operations, to their enterprises. So again, there's strong growth prospects for employment. There's sort of universal demand, whether you're an ICT business or a non-ICT business, for people to support end users, enterprise systems, and online systems. And then there's a lot of demand within ICT-related companies for the ICT management, hardware and software development, and marketing and sales roles. And a lot of that is also in the larger companies as well. ICT workforce demand growth is bigger than job growth in general. So there's, you know, strong prospects for people coming out of these programs. Employers are having a hard time finding adequately trained employees. We've got to do a better job communicating the community college value proposition. And there's a demand for some sort of common framework or standards for workers and users. So we hope that this study can be used to sort of raise awareness of the importance of ICT in California, you know, get the attention of policymakers and educational planners, and just sort of raise the level of attention paid to this field and its employment. And this study is free to download at this address. And there's a summary in the newsletter which is in your package. So I guess before we go on to phase 3, which is the real meat of the study, does anybody have anything that they want to bring up about phase 2, or any comments or questions or suggestions? Harold.
So you described, your survey method, and all of this was pretty much about the market and the private sector.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts at all about public sector and how it fits into this? Because again, whether we like it or not, we have a huge public sector in California that basically is very much intertwined with the private sector. What do you have to say about that?
So public sector was not counted as industry because that's sort of revenue focused and all that, but the employment side does consider government. Government's a major employer of ICT workforce.
You're saying the numbers are to reflect public sector?
Not on the industry side, but on the employment side. Phil, is that right? No, Phil. Any other questions or comments on this? Okay, so then I would move on then to the sort of meat of the meeting right now, the real focus that we want to do. We're grappling now with how do we do phase 3 of this study. And I guess I'd make a little general observation first. So right now there's kind of a CTE model, career and technical education model in the state of California for community colleges and funding their programs. And they're all supposed to have a local advisory group. And that advisory group advises the program on what they should be teaching. What teachers really want to know is what should I be teaching. But these advisory groups, this is a really high quality group right here, but they're really hard to put together. It's really random to get who shows up from meeting to meeting and what they've got on the top of their mind when they do show up. So we think that MPICT can help all kinds of programs, including all of our partners and more from City College, if what we do is frame a study that goes beyond that. So instead of just talking to a handful of people in a room, let's use the handful of people in the room to shape a study that goes out and talks to 600 companies, because that's way beyond what most advisory groups can do. And what we want to do now is try to shape that phase 3 so we can do a similar kind of effort and come back with some real information about what should people be teaching. So we need to get a lot more granular about workforce demand. What is the knowledge and skill set that you're seeking, and how much of it do you want? And we've got to talk to employers in the way that they think about things to do that. Then we also need to talk to colleges about what do you do, what do you produce, what is it that you teach today. And there's a slightly different mindset and way of thinking and talking in the academic environment. So there's a Tower Babel effect going back and forth between us. And how can we sort of reconcile those and come up with something that works for everybody? So this is our sort of broad brush idea, is to have a series of focus groups where we develop an ICT framework and some plain language categories and descriptions of job functions beyond those 5 categories that we talked about before, more granular, but things that common, normal human beings, non-geeks, can understand and relate to. And then when we have that, use that to do a survey with enough employers to be statistically significant. to quantify demand for specific knowledge and skill sets. And then talk to, develop some ideas about how employers can use this framework to create job requirements and communicate those clearly. And then at the same time, we want to be working with the academic side on what is it that you offer and how are those programs structured and what are the common elements in them. And how can educators use the results of this study and then let's roll that out for impact. So, I don't know, any thoughts or reactions to this high-level plan? Pierre?
Yes. I find this is really exciting for me and for others. We had, before this meeting, we had our monthly regional meeting on the meeting. And definitely for us who are the teaching this was like, for us who are teaching, this is really that's what we spend a lot of time talking about. We are creating courses in all colleges. Yes, this should work, huh? We're creating courses in each of our colleges, certificates and degrees. They seem to be similar. We have done a first survey last year in our website. It's from our website to look at all 76 colleges. We have an idea of what is offered in these colleges. But on our end, while the first 3 bullets are being developed, and we have some funds, we are looking for additional funds for MPICT to really do this work that James laid out for you. On our end, me and my partners and associates, we want to look at what is offered in California and in our region in this field, what kind of courses, and try to make sense of it so that when we come at the end of this project, we will be able to look at the skills that the job requires that be defined through the study, that survey of the industry, and say, are we offering the right courses? Are we offering the right degree? Are we meeting the demand? It is shocking to me to the result of our phase 2 that we're doing our best to educate our the population of California, of our colleges, and then employers have to go abroad to find or in other states to find people who have the qualification that they need for the job. So I'm really excited about this because I think we have to get some specialists and find this work that James proposed here for this creating the number 3 bullet, specify the job requirements, quantify the employment, and know what is needed. And then on our end, we'll be able to say, this is what our region offers as far as courses that give degrees, and I expect that there is going to be some gaps. And hopefully, at the end of that, we'll be able to work on it. Obviously, we have no authority. I think there's no authority. But if we put all our efforts together, we can develop some kind of a template of what would be the ideal, and you can see, we can share that with our partner colleges and say, this is what the employers require, and this is what you or we are teaching, and see if we can adjust our education so that we have a better response to the demand.
And I know this is painfully dumb. It is, but it's also.
I mean, we had a meeting this morning, and I received anything about my colleagues that I looked more up. It's really and instead of just creating a new word, because it's a new word because somebody says this is something that we just hear from somebody who has to use a new word. We will ask want to show you, and then I think we want to get your feedback on that. That would be fantastic to do. How I we take care of the work. We don't have to do that part because that is just have to be set on that. The other part we really have.
Okay, so this is our broad plan, and if anybody's got some feedback on how to modify that and make it better, we'd like to hear it.
It seems to me, and you tell me if I'm wrong, is that you have two problems. One is the latency of bringing a syllabus to the student. Time to be able to bring it to, and then the speed of which demand can change with technology environment. So for instance, in the last year or so, virtualization has been hot topic. How do you get to the point where you can identify that sort of ahead of the curve and be able to deploy that? I'm not quite sure how you're going to do that over your project and then keep on top of that after you develop.
Right.
How you can dynamically be able to track this thing.
Right. I would say that among the public educational systems, community colleges are probably the most nimble. They're able to create and get approval for courses very, very quickly. So they can react, but they react a lot of times to things that aren't really very real. Because, is it a real demand or is it just a flash in the pan newspaper article that somebody read? Is there a real job at the end of this thing? That's the question that people struggle with, and something that we need help answering. As far as the sustainability of this, I think that's a really important point because things change so quickly in this field. And when we get to the structure of this thing, these sort of framework and strategies, we want to have a framework that's stable. So we're talking about kinds of things that don't change. But within that, there are all sorts of different technologies that come and go and software programs that are dominant or replaced or whatever. And there to be useful in the long run, there has to be a refresh process that identifies trends and replacement technologies and things like that.
Yeah, I want to say something to this also. I appreciate what Tim is mentioning about the new trend. I think there is a foundation thing that has not been done. Is the fact that there is a lot of jobs that have some basic needs, some description. I want to know that are we creating, in some fields like nursing or radiologic technology, this is well defined. In our field, it is not. We're trying to. So we want to kind of contribute to a certain standard for the base. And I agree with you. There's going to be some development changes, so we have to adapt to that. And I agree with James. We are ready to do that. Community college is the best place for, there's Nelson is on the core here, virtualization, we get some support from companies that are the leaders in that field, and then we introduce courses in that field if needed. But we have the problem of make sure that we make a good job in preparing the foundation, the basic jobs that are many. And we're doing our best right now. We want to be able to have a confirmation that we are doing the right job, and if necessary, to adjust our courses accordingly.
Okay. It was the same one. Relative to rate of change, I thought that the requirements, but I like the answer relative to the framework, but being necessary. And that might also explain the data that you had on why employers find the employees, the skill set that they're looking for in the rate of change.
Okay.
James? Yeah.
Hi.
This is Nick. Sorry. And I apologize for not being there. It was kind of short notice, but very happy to be part of this group. The results of the study sound very interesting, and I just had a thought as you were talking about next steps. I'm wondering if, as you go down this process, it might not be interesting to whatever survey or perhaps even a collaboration with CETMA, which is the Computer Education Management Association, that represents probably about 100 of the IT companies in the U.S. right now. But the things that they're looking at is how, in their own particular area, how they, all of those companies are looking at how they provide time and material for the next trend. And I think that as you go down this road, it might be interesting to have the conversation with them, because you could, that would be a good way to get a pulse of the industry, if you will, as to what may be coming down the road. And given that the community colleges are quite nimble to adopt things, you certainly would get a qualified opinion on what might be useful as far as creating new employability down with the training. So just a thought, and I'm happy to help broker that if you want.
That's a great suggestion, Nick, from Juniper. Thank you for that, and I'll take you up on that offer. Okay, well, Harold.
I think one of the difficulties and maybe boring aspect of this is we're talking really vague generalities with the intention of doing things meaningful and nimble, and that sort of paradigm or contradiction in terms. One of the things I think to look at in terms of when you do your deep dive in the data is to sort of mimic what a lot of companies do, which basically they look at sectors and they develop practices targeting to those areas. And then potentially you could do a couple of gap technology analysis on, in a certain sector, what are the issues and what are the topics and what are going to be meaningful in terms of how they roll out in the future. For example, one sector that I'm fairly familiar with is like medical technology. Medical technology, they're really looking at mobility solutions. I mean, what happens when doctors run around in hospitals? What kind of ICT is going to happen there? What kind of devices are they going to use? How are they going to transcribe and upload medical records, for example, now, which is a huge investment that the federal government is doing. Another arena, for example, that we're doing a deep dive into is the grid and the transformation of the grid. So in that, we actually have money from the federal government. We're doing a gap analysis on what are the people that are employed in the grid right now, what is their age, who's going to be retiring, and what is the company needs going to be in terms of a lot of technologies that overlay and where they're going. So I think that as you do a deeper dive, you can look at sectors and gaps and certain technologies that are going to be rolling in. That's going to really inform and help out your strategy and also increase the effectiveness of the data that you get.
Great suggestion. In responding to that, I'd like to introduce the framework that we're talking about, because we're trying to come up with a way of structuring those conversations so that everybody's talking about the same thing. You saw this a minute ago. It's really about trying to come up with depth of knowledge and skills. You know, what do people really need to know? Well, at the top of the pyramid up here, we've got your scientists and mathematicians, the engineers, the people who create these technologies. And there are relatively few of those, and they have to be very well educated and have very deep knowledge and understanding. The enabler dimension, the applied technologist, the technician, the people who take an existing technology or a mature technology out into the real world and put it in place and make it work. So that's one dimension. And then there's the dimension down below here of users. And today, pretty much everybody's a user. You got to do something with these technologies, or you're just kind of dead. So there's this dimension of knowledge and skills. And I think if we try to talk about it in sort of a plain language way, most people can get their head around it and sort of place people in that vertical dimension. But you know, these skills are not just in the ICT industry; they're in every industry. And you know, if you look at this pie, you can get a little bit of a sense of you know, volume of people involved. So we've got this, you know, creator, the R&D level here at the middle. That's relatively few people. Community colleges do serve that through the transfer pathway. There's a lot of students who come to community college and take their first 2 years and then go on to college and university. Surprisingly, a large number of people come back after they have their bachelor's degree or even their master's degree because they realize, hey, I don't really have the skills that are needed in the workplace. I've got a general or theoretical knowledge, but people aren't going to pay me for that, especially if I have a history degree, or something that's not really, people won't pay for it. So then there's this applied technology domain. There's lots of jobs out in that. That's the IT departments, the people who work for you. The people who work for you. That's all that technology enabler dimension. And then the user dimension. And within each of these different industries, there is something special. It's industry-specific knowledge. If you're in financial services, there are regulatory requirements. There are operational requirements that are unique to that industry. You've got to know how NASDAQ works and the New York Stock Exchange, all these different trading systems, these quoting systems. There are special requirements for securing user data and so forth. Healthcare, same thing. Biotech companies, there's unique things that happen in that industry. Sometimes there's specialized equipment. A lot of times there are unique requirements around the kinds of things that you do. In the medical field, you've got big radiology files. That's different from an industry that works with tiny little transaction-based files. And there are implications on your ICT infrastructure because of that. But there's a big core of stuff here that's just generally applicable knowledge and skills, kind of no matter what your organization. And then there's the enterprise-specific stuff, things that have been developed for that particular organization that you can't really prepare people too much for other than they have enough foundational knowledge to be able to learn something new. So I guess I would take a pause here to get reactions to this framework. Is this a tool that people intuitively understand, a way of structuring frameworks, conversations so that people know what we're talking about? To reduce that Tower of Babel effect where somebody's talking about one thing, I need a master's degree and experience with the medical industry and product development experience. Well, that's, up here. That's that industry-specific R&D kind of solution. I need somebody who's going to help us roll out our new medical imaging record-keeping system. Well, that's over here.
I will speak to this, and also, echo a little bit, respond a little bit to what Harold was mentioning. I really think it really makes sense because where the time we are in, that some effort made for some industry specific, like for instance, what he was mentioning, the health field, there is some really quick demand. What is forgotten is that it's generally applicable, and this is our role, us who are teaching the ICT department in our colleges, to make sure that that part is, and there is sometimes a lot of confusion because with the funding that came from Washington, there's been efforts to do green IT or whatever IT, health IT, and then they forget that there is already IT training and IT education, and I think there is not enough understanding that the generally applicable is already to be considered by us, be better by us, and not have to better at the same time. I don't want to belittle the importance of this at this stage. That's what I want. But I agree. That's it.
I think that there's at least a way of differentiating between them so that people understand, what is really broadly applicable and what is industry specific and what is a one-off that really is not appropriately taught in any school.
Sorry. I don't have anything creative to say. I just want to back up the point. I think this is intuitive. I think I can understand it. I think I can relate it to the people, for example, you IT work at Berkeley Labs. We see the biosciences on the left-hand side. We see typical skills that would be discussed supporting any group at the lab. And we have enterprise specific. So I think I can explain this to people. I think it's a very good model. So I just wanted to make that point.
Thank you.
Yes, I just wanted to make the observation that I think not only is it useful, I think it's extremely elegant, because it is a very simple way of saying something fairly substantial. And coming from the perspective of looking at my own company and how we've been looking at it, it is something that I could use tomorrow in an internal meeting and everyone would understand perfectly what you were trying to say here. So I would like to see this gain a very wide dispersion and distribution so that everyone is talking in these terms.
Thank you. Wakar from IBM. Okay, so we can refine and improve this. This is what we're starting with. If anybody has suggestions for how to improve it, we'd like to hear them. So then we start to delve into each of these different dimensions. And if you look in your folder, there's some super rough starting point drafts, some pieces of paper that include different components here. And at the ICT user level, we want to have some focus groups to identify, what are the major components of this user level proficiency, digital literacy. And this is looking at it from the technology standpoint. And if we have time, I'd like to come back and do a deeper dive on this later. But it's basically, the technologies involved are hardware, software, and services. Do you understand, the computing and communication devices that you need to make use of in, your individual and your work life? Do you know how to, the peripherals that go with them, the printer and the fax machine and that kind of stuff? Do you know how to jack it into the wall and plug it into the network? And do you know how to secure it? Can you run the operating system? Can you run the applications that are in demand for wherever you are in life? And there's some of those that are common, an ability to produce a document or to present a mathematical argument in a spreadsheet, or to present something, in a presentation software. But then there's also this services area. Can you buy broadband internet access? Can you get an email service? Do you know how to conduct a search on the internet? So these kinds of things. We'd like to have a focus group to come up with some sort of a core definition of this, because if you look at the volume of people who are users, there's an extraordinary demand and a huge implication to community college education, because community colleges should be teaching users how to be competent users, because they need that to be successful in any field. So there's
the truth of the matter is that in some of, and I can speak for many of my colleagues here in our department, our info courses have been filled with a lot of students and keep being filled with a lot of students, and we have to make sure that they are really that we respond to the needs of the users. That's really what the intro courses are. I don't know, we have like 800 students coming.
So actually, I have a question. Some of these things that we would, so I guess I'm getting a little caught on the fact that the ICT users aren't counted as part of the workforce numbers. Is that correct? Okay. So then, some of the things, I think that there's some things that get lumped in maybe from the enabler group in some of these things. We teach people how to build websites and use FTP and some things that I think maybe don't quite fit into the user category and are in more of the enabler category.
I think that's a great point. One of the things I didn't point out here before is this unbelievably fuzzy line between users and enablers, because it's not a clear distinction between what is a user and what is an enabler. And that's a good point. And that's one of the things we want to work through in focus groups is, what do we include in this and what do we not include in it? But anyway, broad brush, let's come back to this towards the end of the meeting if we have time. It's not just technologies. There's the knowledge. What is it? What can you do with it? Why would you use it? What can you accomplish with it? How does it work? How do you evaluate and acquire it? How do you set it up? How do you maintain it? How do you update it? How do you fix it when it breaks? How do you secure it? And why do you respect privacy? What's appropriate user etiquette and ethical behavior? Things like this, generally, and perhaps specifically for these different technology domains. And then there's the skills. What do you want people to be able to do? Evaluate and acquire it, set it up, make it work, use it to accomplish something valuable, maintain it, keep it going, secure it, and behave civilly. So these kinds of things that we want to work through in focus groups, and then eventually include some sort of a query about this in surveys to figure out how much demand there is to it. So again, here's the fuzzy line here, and one way of structuring this would be to say, well, the first level of employment beyond users is those people who are able to help other users. So these are the help desk kinds of roles. The people who, if these users aren't productive, our organization is not productive. Therefore, we need to help these users be productive. And so there's a line of employment, of activity, of jobs in this dimension, and maybe you recognize some of this. So, helping users do all the things that we want them to do it, help them fix it, and secure it. Keeping track of things in record-keeping systems, doing moves, adds, and changes. Using the tools and processes that are developed for that in big organizations, the HDI kinds of things that you guys are involved in. So, we may want to develop some sort of description of technologies and knowledge and skills at this dimension that we can include in a survey. Because we hear a lot of anecdotal stories about these jobs being exported. My DSL doesn't work. I call help desk for AT&T. I get a guy named Steve in Bangalore. Steve. And, are these jobs being exported? I don't know. I mean, let's get something behind it through a survey. So then we've got this enabler dimension, and we're probably going to bog down here a little bit because this is a big focus area for community colleges. What are the different sub-dimensions within this? Because we need... Okay, we're going to ignore that. So so we got to carve this up into different domains because we can't talk about all of it at once. So the first domain in this draft is networking and telecommunications technologies. So telecommunications, kind of is networking. It's a matter of scale. So what are the different dimensions within that? So there's the, your personal work area, your workspace domain, the connection between your computer and your peripherals and your hub and your printer and all of that kind of stuff. What do you have to know for that? There's the home technology integration dimension. So plugging in my stereo and my TV and my HD recorder and my all this stuff that's out there now. There are jobs behind that. And what specifically do people need to know and be able to do in that dimension? Local area networks, service provider network access. That's a big one. How do you connect to service provider networks? Metro area networks. Well, that's mostly for service providers, but there's also some companies that will put that together themselves. The wide area networks. There's the wired and wireless voice communications. So whatever we come up with in the course of this focus group effort, these things aren't going to change at this level. We want to come up with some sort of plain language structure, nomenclature, framework that doesn't change. So the specifics out here may change. It may be DOCSIS 3.0 right here today. It may be DOCSIS 5.0 5 years from now. So those things will change, and that's part of the refresh that you were talking about, Ken, the need to be able to do that. So the Internet systems, there's the creative component, the aesthetic design, but then there's the more technical piece of it, the programming, database administration, system admin, all of that kind of stuff. And then there's the commerce component, the tying into other systems and making that work. There's sort of, we're calling it infrastructure here, but this is like the physical plant in an enterprise. Jacks and closets and distribution systems and alarm systems and building management and control systems, that kind of thing. So there's jobs behind that. Is that something that, how much demand is there behind that? Data center systems, this is one that includes a whole bunch of stuff. All the different servers, all the different racks and power and alarm systems and intrusion detection and firewalls and SANs and all of that stuff, cloud-based services. A lot of that stuff is in the data center now.
I just have to kind of refocus a little bit. So these lists of technologies, but we're really looking at jobs, right? The survey is about people. The question would be, do you need people that have experience with this technology? Is that right?
Well, that's a good question. So I have a hypothesis. And the hypothesis is that educators tend to think about the field in terms of technologies. But employers tend to think about it in terms of what are people going to do to add value to my enterprise? What are you going to accomplish for me? So if you ask an employer about some of these things, they may not even know. They want you to do something. So they tend to respond with sort of skills-based responses. And so there has to be a mapping of skills to technology domains.
But in jobs, they tend to flatten out with the larger company. So typically, for instance, coming from the network environment, I'm familiar with the ISO layers, the 7 layers for networking. Typically, jobs at a larger company, like for instance, if I was going to go work for Comcast or something like that, I may specialize only in the cable layout and dressing and things like that. I may not get into the network side of things. Or I may have, if I'm a network engineer, I'm going to call a different department and a different skill set to go out and look at the physical layer and deal with it.
Right.
So I'm in a smaller company, they're going to be more of a generalist.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have to worry about the copper that's going to go to the telephone jack all the way up to what kind of PBX that they're going to install, like a voice system, and then the network that's going to go out and connect to the PSCN.
Right.
So who are you aiming these jobs for? And if it's going to be more flatter, you're going to have to drill in deeper into the skill set that's going to go for that job.
Great. Good point. That's Tim Pozar. And that's one of the reasons that we feel like we have to talk about these things in terms of job function instead of job title, because that function could reside, in one individual. It could be a tiny fraction of individual. It could be a full-time job for an individual. It could be called anything. What we really want to do through the focus groups is come up with some structure that allows us to communicate efficiently with both business and education. It's a common language, a meeting point of, here's what you want, here's what we can give you. We're speaking the same language. And, this is all just draft. This is like something to seed the conversation right now. But I guess the point is that there's sort of high-level domains, and then there's stuff that you can talk about in here that's not going to change. I mean, there's still going to be some sort of a cable plant in the building. That might change. That might be fiber tomorrow. That might be something we can't anticipate tomorrow. But there's still something some communication media that's out in that building. So I don't want to bog down in it too much. I just want to sort of skirt across it because it's more, with this group, it's more about structure and vision and framework. We can try to hone what these things are in focus groups. And please do provide comments on the written documents that you have, or send us emails or something if you have ideas about how this structure could change. But so that there was a high-level domain, networking and telecommunications. There's another one that's programming. So, what's the high-level stuff here that people need to be able to know, and then what's the low-level stuff? So, there's the programming domain. You definitely have to know some languages, but those languages may change. So, this and this, we don't want to see change. We want to come up with a stable structure, and then let this come and go, and we'll update it, from time to time. So there's the sort of general enterprise applications. There's a whole bunch of these, and there's a whole bunch of jobs out there. Database and HR systems and email and facilities management and so forth. But what are these high-level categories, and then what are the specific things behind it? Human resources, PeopleSoft, whatever it happens to be at a given moment. So then, back to Harold, there's this whole dimension of industry-specific stuff. So these days, you can't be an auto mechanic if you can't work with a computer, because all of those modern diagnostic systems are computer-based. You have to know what they are. Some of this is user level, some of it is support level. But big CAD CAM systems, they're users of those systems, and then they're enablers of those systems, the people that run the back end and back all that stuff up. So this, there's an opportunity to identify things within different industries that have a lot of demand behind them. So we obviously haven't done much thought about this yet, but that's something to do with focus groups. Would be, let's have a focus group on healthcare, and let's talk about the specific tools, and knowledge that are in demand there. And if it turns out there's a zillion jobs out there, community college can respond like that and develop people with those skills. But there's got to be some way of identifying it.
I think, the issue at this stage for us, and maybe you can help us, and I think maybe I speak for myself, but this is a lot of focus groups. You know what I mean? And I think I need to, and I've seen this before, how many focus groups we get. I don't have so much money for all these focus groups. I'm really concerned. what is the scope of what we're going to do? This is a little bit, I'm echoing a little bit what Craig was saying. It's a lot. And I think maybe the people here would think, how can they help us the best? Where are we going to focus our emphasis? ICT is very big. So I don't know.
I'll give you my reaction. I don't think there's any way we're going to do this as part of phase 3. But we can identify this structure and the methodology as something for future work that someone else can do. But I think we have to focus on what has the biggest impact to community college programs. And that's part of what we have to identify in this process too, is what really is, what can we wrap up in the next 6 or 8 months that provides the most value to community colleges. So these higher dimensions, for example, I don't think are an appropriate focus of this study. So this fuzzy line here between the R&D layer and the enabler layer is where the engineers and the scientists come down and meet with their customers. So let's identify problems and specifications. Let's install, big customer systems, that kind of thing. That's clearly not an appropriate focus of community college. And neither is the R&D layer. We're not teaching people to, develop brand new technologies. So I think, these two are very clear examples of something that exists out there, and we want to be able to talk about it, but it's not an appropriate focus of community college. So maybe we should pause for a moment, because you've kind of seen the structure of our thinking so far. What we might do with phase 3 and how we might organize it, and what we might deliver with it. Reactions, suggestions, comments, ways to improve it. So the handouts that you have are, I would characterize those as seeds for discussion. It's it's easier to talk about something than to make something up from scratch. So we just had a little jam session where we cranked these things out.
So I guess my question is, the path forward is to refine this, and is that what you're asking for?
That would be what we do in the focus groups. Is to refine these things and come up with a structure that experts tell us are a good way to organize things. And we've got enough pieces out here on the edge. Maybe they just serve as examples.
Okay.
But that structure is what we would then use as part of a survey vehicle to go out and try to quantify demand.
Are you asking for individual companies to go back and sort of do a sanity check with our own IT divisions? Or are you asking down the road for people to meet and talk about it later?
Well, I think there would have to be a series of meetings that gather input and move towards consensus with this. Because there'll be a whole bunch of different perspectives on this and contributions to this. And our work we can build on. We're interested in hearing about that if you have it. And then, we want to, and so then there's possible uses of this. So if we did end up with a version of this that, had a lot of content in it, maybe that's a way that employers could specify job demand. I'm looking for check, 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 check. Okay, now I know what I'm asking for. And then if an academic program could say, here's what we offer with this credential, check, 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 then you can match, Or another possible use for it is in articulation discussions between different colleges, because that's a hard process right now. It's a one-to-one negotiation, and what I do and what you do, are those the same things? How do they relate? Where are the gaps? You know, am I going to let you do this? Am I not going to let you do this? Maybe this is a tool that could facilitate those discussions as well.
Yeah. So if I may, you know, ask this question, you know, we are talking about focus group, and I know we won't be able to do a focus group here because we're running out of time, and we would have used a focus group on digital literacy. I'll tell you that. That's why there is more on digital literacy. It's a big issue because in California right now there is a, you know, definition of digital literacy which we disagree with Adam Pierre because it's the information literacy, and they forgot the technology. But my question to you, James, is that how would the other focus group be formed around what into this framework?
Okay. Well, so since most of you in here are probably networking people, so you might have a focus group about networking, and you've got people in the room who know stuff. And you basically want to work out with people, and does this, you know, categorization of different things make sense? And if so, what are the things that are included in this different dimension, so that we have kind of a, you know, a definition of the technologies included in that field.
And the focus group will be made of people who employ.
I think you would want to have focus groups with different compositions and perspectives until you reach a point where people aren't disagreeing with you too much.
The selection of the composition of the focus group.
That's very important. Yeah. Yeah.
I was also thinking that because of the work that was done in the past with, I forget what NWCET stands for, but they have a template that kind of breaks down functions and tasks, performance indicators, technical knowledge, and then skills based on the SCAN approach. And this template, even though they did this, it's out of date, but the template is still useful, and that could be a guide in the focus groups.
Right. So that was the Northwest Center for Emerging Technologies. They did a skills standards work, and there was another group that did that. There was a National Skills Standards Board. Their work is 6 or 7 years defunct now, but it was employer-based demand in terms of skills. And they didn't talk about technologies. But yeah, I mean, that's another piece of the puzzle, is to explore you know, prior work, other categorizations of this kind of thing, and try to reconcile them, to line them up.
Yeah, another dimension that you may want to take into consideration to help focus and direct and see where the benefits are is actually to take a look at where things are going based on what they said before, trends in the future. Because I don't think necessarily that the way things have been done in the past in terms of technology is going to be what's going to drive the next wave. So, and some of the trends to take a look at is, for example, we all started in technology basically assigning IP addresses to computers. Now, the way the world is changing, and thank goodness IPv6 is coming out, everything that plugs into an electrical circuit probably will have an IP address. This is a whole way of looking at things that, you know, all the guys at the top of your pyramid are looking at right now in terms of the Internet of Things. The way that we built applications in the past was all closed systems, very proprietary, and closed standards that, like IBM is one of the folks that pioneered. They're big evangelists now in open systems and open standards. What does that mean? What kind of skill sets are going to be involved? How is that going to change this set of skills that are looking at in the future? And sort of the last thing is that the whole concept of interacting with technology actually may go more in the direction of using applications that are social networking applications than actually computer applications. that's going to radically change the skill set that's needed, the skills that people are used in terms of how this goes on in the future. And who knows, maybe the only network that will be around in the future may be our cell phone network. So you really have to drive your methodology and I think your whole strategy behind not sort of the way things have happened in the past, because that may rapidly be old school, but where things are going in the future.
Well, that was Harold Gallisher. And hopefully the framework that emerges from this process is useful in discussions like that. That you can say, this area, up here, whichever one it is, is really going away. There's no demand in this. It's being replaced by demand in, this, or this, probably. So, but at least you can pose the questions in a way that gets you some sort of statistically significant answers. You can talk about trends from one area into another.
Quite frankly, if you have a focus group that are experts in this, they're going to do exactly what you just did, right? They're going to say, okay, well, wait a minute, you're looking at this list here, but what you're going to deploy this technology on is very, very different for the future.
Right.
So real valid that we're recognizing it here, and we'd expect that if you've got a focus group on this technology specifically, they're going to be the first to bring that up, right? So I think that's
right.
a great observation.
So, these roles here, developing users with their own computers and devices out on the edge that are really powerful, well, that's going away. It's being replaced by cloud-based services, and what we need is more people who are competent in the data center, or whatever. But we wanted a tool for those discussions as well.
And I think what was just mentioned is that the list that is in our hands is not at all a final list. It's really, and I really appreciate the work that James has done, because you have to start from something. And it's a lot of effort that was done, and it's really not wasted, because it's going to be the basis for this decision, that conversation. So I just want to acknowledge that. Yeah.
Great. So any other comments on phase 3 structure? Michael.
We may actually more on some of you.
So Brett and I have been sort of holding our own conversation over here about social networking, and there was a comment about that you talked about. So I think it needs a greater inclusion as a part of the infrastructure as well as the educational component, because of the demand of industry, and with brands specifically. I mean, you go out and you look for somebody, you Google them, you check their Facebook account. Are they going to embarrass my company? So that's such a dynamic and integral part of the job market now. And we were talking about a whole new job that exists called
a web content manager.
Web content manager. So, and that, perhaps you've heard of that. Somebody is at Safeway and you give them a bad remark. Safeway gets back to you to fix it because they live and die by social comments now, because there's no more filtering by the PR department. So some more inclusion about the whole social network, Facebook, how you manage your own account, how businesses are using, and how it's changing the technological emphasis.
Mm-hmm. Great. So hopefully that would be built into the structure in the course of focus groups, and then we could actually inquire about demand that's behind that, or trends that are behind that. Okay. So we're probably not going to do a real deep dive into this, but I'm very interested in getting your reactions to something here. And I'll warn you now that there's a Tower of Babel effect going on here. And this relates to digital literacy. So there's a digital literacy effort underway in California right now, generated by an executive order from Governor Schwarzenegger. It's established a digital literacy advisory committee. Basically, they're trying to come up with a digital literacy plan for California. And interestingly, the United States is pretty much the only first world country that doesn't have a digital literacy standard. And California would be the first state in the United States to produce one. So this study group is in play with this, and this is the definition that they've come up with for digital literacy. And I'd like to just take a moment to review it. Access, manage, integrate, evaluate, create, communicate. This is ICT user knowledge, competency, skills. You can see the definitions there. So how many of you are teachers in ICT-related departments? So if you got this, would you know what to teach in your department? What would you teach people?
It's like how to browse the web, how to put together a paper. I mean, it's all communication skills, really, and it's finding information, right?
Any other comments from teachers?
My comment there is just it's more emphasis on literacy as opposed to digital literacy. It's just a matter of finding the information, and the fact that it happens to be a digital media at the moment. Maybe it's changed slightly, but the basics are still there for just literacy knowledge.
Okay. I agree, and I'm trying to insert myself into this process to provide that perspective. You know, ICT, the noun in ICT is technology. Now, well, digging a hole with a shovel is a technology, so you got to refine that a little bit. You know, you can't just say tech. So it's information and communications technologies. It's those technologies that help people, you know, with computers and communications. There's none of that here. There's no technology. They've added, you know, in digital environments and, you know, using ICT tools and things as sort of an afterthought. So there's a little history behind this. Everybody knows ETS, the you know, big testing organization out of Princeton. They came up with this iSkills test, which had some traction in California with the CSUs. Look at their definition over there. Looks pretty familiar, doesn't it?
Nature.
Okay. And here's the College and Research Libraries Association definition. So I think the point is that these definitions are not coming from technical departments, they're coming from library organizations. And if you look at these definitions here, this is the same stuff I was asked to do 25 years ago before I ever saw a computer in my life. So we used books and card catalogs back then. And now they're saying you've got to be able to do this stuff, oh, and you've got to be able to use computers to do it. But there's no how do you do that component to this. Here's the closest thing to a standard in the U.S. For an assessment. It's Certiport. It's called the IC3. You can see its components: computing fundamentals, hardware, software, operating systems, key applications, common program functions, word processing, spreadsheet, and presentations, and living online, communication networks. You know, how do you navigate network communities safely, that kind of thing. So those of you who are community college teachers, again, when you see this, do you know what to teach? Yeah? Anybody, I mean, does this resonate better than what you saw before? Okay. So ETS, remember iSkills a minute ago? It's gone away. Dead. Been replaced by something called iCritical Thinking, which is done in partnership with ETS and Certiport. Look at the definition down here. So really what we're selling the state of California as ICT user competency is what they're calling critical thinking. And this is right off their webpage. You know, what's missing from digital literacy? Most Coursework and certifications associated with digital literacy focus on two strands: foundational concepts, computers, networks, and the internet, and current or contemporary skills. Now we're adding this new thing called critical thinking. Well, the state of California is missing the two strands that are, essential to user competency in digital literacy. So, what are other people doing as a framework? Here's the United Nations. Well, they're saying, none of this is enough. You have to think about it in a higher context. To be successful, people have to have thinking skills. They have to have communication skills, interpersonal. They have to have, reading, writing, and arithmetic sort of skills. Here's the ICT user skills here, and they use ICT. Here's information literacy. It's an entirely different domain, an entirely different level. You got to have this, and 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 you got to have this to really be successful in the workplace. This framework is more comprehensive. Just FYI, there's an effort in Europe, eSkills, all the major industry players are a part of it. They haven't really produced much yet. But the closest thing we have to a global standard is the International Computer Driver's License, which is in Europe is known as the European Computer Driver's License. You look at its components here. Concepts of ICT, using the computer, word processing, spreadsheets, database, presentation, web browsing, and communications. ICT teachers, do you know what to teach here? Okay, straightforward. It's in 148 countries and 41 languages. None of this is in California's standard. Here's another one that's out there, International Society for Technology and Education. And their focus is more, what do we need in education now that we live in a digital world? And there's a component geared towards teachers, there's a component geared towards administrators, and there's a component geared towards students. And you can see the different components along here on the left. Well, the technology, operations, and concepts, that's close to the ICT literacy component down here, separate from critical thinking, problem solving, and decision-making kinds of things. Partnership for 21st Century Skills. Probably most of us have heard about this. It's a who's who of business and industry in terms of its membership. And they're basically saying to be successful in the 21st century, you got to have more than you got today coming out of the school systems. And these are the different components over here on the right. Look at this one. ICT literacy is different from information literacy. You got to have both. Neither one of them is enough. So if there's not a framework, a place to orient these things in relation to each other, you're in trouble. One last one, and I'll stop. This is created by the IT Association of America about 2 or 3 years ago in cooperation with the Department of Labor. They've since been swallowed up by this Tech America thing. And so all this work has kind of gone flat. But they created this framework for discussion about knowledge and skills needed for success in the IT workplace. And I like this one. They've got personal effectiveness competencies down here. This is soft skills kinds of things. You got to have all of this stuff to be successful in the workplace. You got to have academic competencies, your basic education stuff. And look at that. This is digital literacy right here. Everybody needs basic computing skills to be successful in the modern world. They've got the workplace competencies. These are the kinds of things that we're being challenged to deliver as part of technical education programs. And there's a tools and technology component here. And then here's all the stuff that is typically taught in community college. So anyway, I guess I'm interested in a reaction from MPICT's advisory panel on California's proposed digital literacy standards.
So
you know,
we basically would like to be able to tell that the advisory panel advises us to go to the state and say, this is the next step. Would you be sure if you agree to do that? You know,
okay,
and,
then
we would use your name. Say that you have this and you agree with that. That is fine.
actually we will not use your personal names unless you give us permission. But we'll say that MPICT's advisory panel, the majority of people thought that the definition of digital literacy was inadequate. And that way we're not putting anyone on the spot. Well, we've taken way more of your time than we deserve, perhaps, but you know, wanted to tell you a little bit about what's going on at MPICT, tell you what happened as part of the Phase 2 study. There was some very interesting stuff we learned. ICT is big and important in California. It deserves attention. There's jobs out there, and there's great opportunities for community colleges. But we got to do a better job figuring out what are we going to teach. And so we need a better way of figuring that out than we've had in the past. And that's the focus of this Phase 3 study. We're grappling with it. We have the best intentions. You know, it's a tough problem. We may not get it right. We probably won't get it right. People will disagree with us. But we're grappling with it. And we'd appreciate any input that anyone would like to provide on that. If you have suggestions for us or people you'd like to put us in touch with, please do. And we'll keep you informed as this thing evolves over the next 3/4 of the year or so. And I'll try to communicate. I'm sorry that Susan's not here today. Both Susan from the CETF was supposed to be here today, so was Rochelle Chong, who was former PUC commissioner who leads this effort from the CIO office. There's also one of the Economic and Workforce Development Centers of Excellence from Sacramento who's willing to fund a digital literacy survey in the next month. But both of those guys got sick today too. Sorry. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for your patience, for your research. This is not for this big project. And we, so you know, we're going to have 2 big projects. The big project, the teachers also, we have our IT models that we're going to try to make sense of our course. Thank you very much.
Do you have a chart today?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, so I would say that this whole thing has been recorded, and we'll put it up on our YouTube channel, so anybody can see that. And I'll send the slides, I guess, to everybody. Yes, please.
I think at a minimum level, we have a way to communicate through email, but I think there's also many good collaborative workspace technologies that we obviously could use to further the conversation, which I think we can plug in the committee, the advisory panel, if we can get their input. So I think that's something to consider, because in between these meetings that we meet twice a year, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And if people have a space that they can get the ideas and see what other people are thinking about, that will help in terms of refining some of the frameworks.
That's good. And one point Chris just made is, you know, we'd like to be collaborating with you all beyond just 2 meetings. So if there are things we can get going that, you know, between our organizations outside of these biannual meetings, let's work on that. I think that would be great. Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you. There is a little time pressure here.